Welcome everyone to another edition of BizzTalk Africa. And I'm Jason Schuster, your host representing BizzTech. And with me today is Seipati Mokhuoa, who is from multiple different companies, but is an expert when it comes to investing in Africa. And I'm really excited to talk to her today and to see where her insight is and learn a lot more about what she does. And our topic today is the ideal time to invest in Africa. Seipati, thank you so much for being here today. Really excited. And could you tell us just a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background, a little bit about what you're doing right now?
Hi, Jason. Thank you so much for having me. Really am honored to be your guest this evening. And to your audience, well, it's almost evening in South Africa.
Right.
And greetings to your audience and whoever's watching, and welcome to this evening's topic. I think it's actually quite an interesting topic that a lot of people are talking about. But before we go into that, like you said, so a little bit about myself. I think I'd like to start with my baby. I am the founder of Sawil, which recently has been, transitioning into something else. So it's quite difficult because I used to say I'm the founder and CEO of Southern African Women in Leadership, but it has now changed to Strategic African Women in Leadership because there's been a demand in the continent for us to, to expand and to explore. And we listened and we honored that request from our fellow women leaders in the continent. So we are now Sawil, but no longer Southern African Women in Leadership. So I've stepped down as the CEO, but still somewhere there at the helm of it as the executive chair. I started the organization in 2014. And a lot of people ask me this question, but why? Why did you feel the need to start a women's organization or association? For me at the time in South Africa, and the role that I had just been appointed to, I felt so lonely. I was literally the only woman in a male-dominated space. And I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate, but as soon as I was almost maturing into corporate, I was sent to what you would call the country, where maybe where you are or where the US is. So that's like more of your rural village-ish areas. And from a very early age, and that's where my career, as soon as I was sort of climbing the corporate ladder, that's where I went and built my career there, which is actually a lot more difficult place to do that because you deal with really old white men who have run this country for the longest of time. And I'm not, I'm trying to choose my words, but I don't have to actually. This is any woman in South Africa, even I think even in Sandton where we are now, they will probably relate. But the bottom line is there, it's actually a lot more lonelier and more difficult because they don't understand that. They are out of touch with what's happening. Transformation is really not their priority. So being a leader there and amongst them and a 26-year-old can really throw you off. So I felt so lonely and alone. And I thought, you know what? I can't be the only one in this country who feels like this. So let me start an organization. And I did that. This is how Sawil was born. And over the years, I've climbed the corporate ladder and went, more senior roles, and the picture remained the same. I moved around, but the picture just remained the same. So ultimately in 2018, I put my tools down and I said, you know what, I need to focus on this baby. There were other reasons as well, but I chose rather to focus on this baby. That was November 2018, took a little bit of a hiatus in 2019, early 2019. But when I finally came back into the game, we expanded to the SADC region. So SADC in Africa is Southern African countries that form, sort of some form of a union or a community, if I can put it that way. So we spread to those countries, and we started servicing those countries and membership in those particular countries. Last year, we launched our award ceremony, which is the SAWL Trailblazers Awards, and it took on
right.
I've never even imagined before. It was never even in the cards. It's something that we thought, as part of the pandemic, like, how do we lighten up the mood, because everybody is really just struggling at this point in time. We launched that, and all of a sudden the continent is aware, and everybody says, look, we also want to be part of SAWL. You have requests from Nigeria, from Ghana, from Cameroon, etc. So how do you honor those requests? How do you actually say to those women, you can be part of the organization, but you're not in Southern Africa? So we decided, okay, cool. I personally decided that, look, it's time now, I'm gonna let it fly. I've been holding on to it for the longest of time. So I let it fly, and I appointed a new CEO in March. And we have since launched SAWL Nigeria, SAWL Botswana, SAWL South Africa, SAWL Zambia, and today SAWL Cameroon. So we're spreading into the continent I must say, at a very alarming pace. I've also appointed another person. She's Moloko. She's our executive director for the continent. So she's responsible for ensuring that every country has a head, a country head or representative. So that's SAWL, and I love her to bits. That's why I always start with her. That's my baby. But other than that, I also serve as Chief Strategy and Innovation Officer for HD Africa, which also operates in the continent. HD Africa has quite a number of businesses, I think about 6 portfolios that we look after there. So it really is a number of things. You can always check it out if you want to. But the one that is close to my heart is the HD Innovation Hub, where in 2020, during the pandemic, I decided to personally sponsor an accelerator program for startups in the continent who are solving socio-economic challenges that we typically deal with as Africans in our societies. The accelerator program was, I had partners from the UAE, from London, from Turkey. I had partners in South Africa, and of course I had partners in some other parts of like Tanzania, parts of the continent as well. So even startup bootcamp helped us to a certain degree to put this accelerator program together. So we helped. It was a celebration of my 35th birthday. We asked for 35 startups. And no cost, nothing. We didn't spend, well, obviously we spent, but they didn't have to spend money or lose anything on their part. And 90 days later, they were able to pitch to global investors. Some of them were successful, and you know how it goes otherwise, etc.
Right.
Yeah, so that's HD Africa. And then the other one is Board Academy Europe. Board Academy Europe approached me to help establish Board Academy Africa, which would be their subsidiary. So they have offices in Spain, in Germany, in Turkey, etc., and in most parts of Europe. So they wanted to have Board Academy Africa, which is based in Johannesburg and Cape Town. So it's me and 2 other guys in there. And what we do there typically is board training. And we tried, what differentiates us from the rest of the board training programs that we have in the continent is that we have a global overview, right, or access. So if you're a South African woman who is training to become a leader, or you want to start sitting on boards, if you want the best training in the world that speaks to you, this is the right place to find it. But it actually also is global, meaning if you partner that now with SAWL, you can get training here in South Africa, and then you can actually easily move to MTN I don't know if you guys know what MTN is or who MTN is. I'm just making an example. It's a telecommunication company in South Africa, or it's well known in the continent. You can easily, become a board member in Nigeria because you are global like that, or you can go and be a board member in Germany. And that's one of the things that, honestly speaking, as difficult as it is, the pandemic has done for us, especially the young people in the continent. It has removed the barriers, for us to economic access, because we used to really struggle. You want to be somebody or something, or change the continent. You want to help build the Africa that you want. But most of the time, what we struggle with is our borders, and the typical barriers that I'm not sure, I don't want to be political, who has them in place. But the pandemic has really opened doors for us to actually showcase to our elders and our predecessors that, guys, the Africa that we want, we really are truly a very rich continent, and we can demand investments, not even beg, because the aid situation, I'm not about that. Anyone that knows me knows that I don't do aid into Africa. Investments, yes, because we're more than capable. We have the resources, we have the minerals, we have the people. We are the youngest continent in the world. So it really is. And if you take technology and innovation into consideration, we really are truly equipped. And had it not been for these lockdowns and the pandemic, maybe maybe nobody would still have noticed us. Maybe we would still have to beg to travel, within the continent or
Sure.
overseas otherwise. So yeah. And the last one is just WBAF, which I've recently left. But still I didn't leave the role in itself. It's Angel Investment Forum, global Global Investment Forum, or Angels Investment Forum.
Right.
So I am an angel investor, so I do invest in startups as well. I do have quite a number of them, a few in Nigeria, here in South Africa, and Botswana, in Namibia as well. So that's me in a nutshell. And otherwise, for fun, personally, I am a mom and I'm a wife. And I chase and hit white balls, small white balls, for fun, which is golf.
Yeah. Okay, fellow golfer. I enjoy that too. I don't get to do it as much as I'd like, but I enjoy the same thing. It's crazy. There's so many questions. Everything that you just said, I have several questions. So my first one, I want to back up just a little bit. Saul, it's your baby. It's growing. You said it's growing at an alarming pace.
Yeah.
One thing that we have in starting this series, I've learned so much about the challenges of growth in Africa, specifically startups, entrepreneurship, and they're different challenges in Africa than what we see in other countries in getting startups to really grow. My question to you about that would be, what has been the biggest challenge with that growth? Like, as you're growing like crazy, like what's been the biggest challenge you've really had to overcome with that growth with Saul?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I only appointed the CEO in March and the executive director for the continent in March. And
Wow.
I stepped down and I said to them, this is my vision. And I want, if you are in, obviously, you go through quite a number of people to interview and find the right people, somebody, in terms of synergy, do they understand what it is that you're trying to do? Because I mean, over the past 7 years, I've heard people say, I don't know what it is that you're trying to do. So my biggest thing when I interview people is, do you get do you clearly understand what it is that I'm trying to do? So when I finally found these two women, I could easily let go, because I knew and I trusted that they understood what it is that we're trying to do. So in terms of challenges, honestly, I'll be lying. We haven't had any yet. I mean, March, this is April, and the pace, like I said, it's scary, because 2019, early 2019 was still just South Africa, and then SADC, and now we're the continent. So it's scary, but it's no longer on just my shoulders. I've let go. I've let go. So I'm that founder. I had many phone calls on the day that we announced that I'm stepping down as a chief executive. A lot of people were saying, "Are you sure you're ready to let go?" I'm like, I said, guys, 7 years. Somebody has to somebody has to carry the baton, and I'm, yeah, I think I'm quite comfortable. I trust, I mean, a high caliber of women that we have on board. I even, it even scares me. Even the women that they are also bringing on board. Just yesterday we had some interviews. I sit there and I think, oof, yeah, this is quite interesting. So that would be, it's not a challenge, it's an exciting challenge. It really is. It's also a blessing to know that you are able to get even people who are more experienced and educated, more experienced, more educated, more exposed than you are, who are able to say, we see your vision and we want to carry it forward. So challenges, maybe let's talk in 12 months time.
12 months, you got it. We'll talk in 12 months.
Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. I think there's nothing better than when other people can see and capture your vision. And,
yeah.
I know that stepping down as CEO is really difficult for a lot of founders, but it sounds like you've got a really good, healthy attitude about it and you're excited.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's really, really interesting. And then before we kind of talk a little bit more about investing, the other thing that you said that really, only because we only have so much time, so I gotta like pick and choose my questions here. You mentioned investment versus aid, and you're a big fan of investment over aid in Africa. Now, being outside of Africa, right? I have, I've grown up with a certain bias that, it's our responsibility outside to aid Africa because because Africa needs it. But the more and more that I talk to entrepreneurs in Africa, I get a different mindset of actually, no, we are entrepreneurs. We can do this. We have resources, people, brilliance. So I would love if you could just expand on your thoughts on that just a little bit more.
Ooh, you don't want to get me started on that.
I do, though. I do. I want to hear more about your thoughts. This is the whole reason for this show, is this kind of stuff.
Literally putting me in a corner here. I'm going to step on some toes. But listen, for
That's
me,
okay.
speaking, Africa. So I'm going to ask you a question. Do I look like I need aid to you?
No, not at all.
So what is it? I don't know if it's the media or our predecessors, the government. I actually don't want to go too much into that. And in fact, some of it I know, but I'm not going to talk about it here. But I feel like the way we are portrayed to the rest of the world is not what or who we truly are. Yes, we have challenges in Africa. We really do have lots of, like any other country. I mean, I interact a lot with India. My counterparts and associates and business partners in India or in London or wherever, they look like me. But there are impoverished areas or disadvantaged areas where they live. So similar to Africa, you do have people who can think, people who can learn, people who can apply the knowledge that they have acquired, and people who can excel. In fact, people who excel. So just like any other place in the world, we are way more than capable. The richest Black man in the world is from Africa, Aliko Dangote. Can somebody, I don't think people are not even aware that guy is even richer than, we love Oprah. We all celebrate the likes of Oprah. If you look at skin color, and as a woman, I'm a big fan. And I grew up following her. But had I known earlier enough that there's an Aliko, there's a Strive Mokhuoa, we have examples in our continent who really, really truly, exemplify what it is that as the young people see in the Americans, and now the Chinese. I mean, everybody's now following Jack Ma, and etc. But it's not necessary. All I'm saying is that look at this. There's nothing impoverished about this. So there's no idea that we need investments. In fact, I think, I know that, I know that it's actually a very I don't know. I must watch my weights. I am watching my weights. So this statement, for example, if you're sitting where I come from a village, very extremely underprivileged, no internet, etc. That's where I grew up. So a person who's sitting there, if they watch this interview, even some of my peers that I grew up with might say, girl, you didn't represent us well.
I got it.
But that's not the reality. And again, I'm going to go back to Oprah. Where did she say she grew up? It was a disadvantage, some farm somewhere, etc. But how come for Africans we're not able to understand that in as much as there is poverty, there's excellence as well. There's poverty, right. There's excellence as well. We're doers, we're movers and shakers, and in fact, to a certain degree, we're also investors. But aid now, and again, thanks to COVID, we've been exposed. It really has exposed us to these platforms. Ordinarily would be reserved for our leaders and people at the helm of government, etc. They're the ones who are negotiating with the techies, etc., and UAs and so forth. But right now, I'm able to have those conversations. Well, whether it's on behalf of the continent or on behalf of myself, I doubt it's for myself because everything I do is for the continent. But I don't need a title, a political title to serve. So yeah, Africa does not need aid.
I love it. But what we do want to talk about, though, is investment. Is right now, is this the ideal time to make investments in Africa? And I mean, and I'm not talking about just outside investment into Africa, but it's also, there's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of investors in Africa who are making investments right now. And so is right now, is this the best time?
Yeah, precisely. I mean, we had a conversation with a very close friend of mine at the beginning of the lockdown. He's in Morocco, I'm in South Africa, so it's literally the top of the continent. I'm at the bottom of it. About how this was last year, May, I think, when we had this conversation. And we were saying that, look, there's no better time than now for even Africans themselves to invest in Africa. Those offshore investments and bragging about, oh, I've got investments in Singapore and whatever, like, get over that nonsense. Your continent needs you. Your continent needs you, because and that stems from the fact that if you look at the beginning of COVID, for the first time, it's almost like it was a reset. If you look at the beginning of these lockdowns and confinements, etc., you realize that everyone was in panic mode. Whether you were, in the United States or whether you're in Europe or in China, everybody was unsure and uncertain about the future. So we were having that conversation. How do we establish platforms that ensure, or that will ensure, that even Africans themselves look after Africa? So you're talking about the ideal time to invest. I think it's the ideal time to invest wherever you see fit, whatever speaks to your investment appetite. But honestly speaking, for Africa, we are at a point where we're saying that we know what we're worth, because there's some sort of an equal reset footing. But it's up to us also to take advantage of that and run with it. And if we don't do that, it's our loss. And we can't blame anybody after this pandemic to say, oh, you didn't invest in us, you didn't. It really is. Yeah, so ideal time to invest in Africa, most definitely.
Awesome. I love that. So kind of continuing on that topic, one of the things in our post when we were promoting this show is about the UAE, and the UAE is the largest investor in Africa. And I feel like, I guess I would love to know, how do you envision that going forward? Do you envision the UAE continuing to be the largest investor, or do you see other countries catching up? Do you see them making a bigger impact because they're closer by? They understand the problems and the issues facing Africa, where to invest properly. I'd love for you to share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think in terms of various outside interests into the continent. Everybody is obviously interested. If you look at China, they have been interested for quite some time.
Oh, sure.
Precisely, they've been woke. They've like
That's right. That's right.
that's good. So they know where the money's at. And then if you look at, for example, last year, I don't remember which month it was. I was one of the speakers at a Techie Africa investment forum.
Okay.
So you have various countries across the world who are interested in this particular continent. And for some reason, one of the things that really annoy me is that all of you think that we are a country. We are actually a continent with countries. So I don't know what makes Techie think that they can invest in Africa and not choose one country in Africa. It's just one of those things. And then you look at, so the UAE in particular, I'm not a president. I'm not the president of the United States of Africa. I'm not, so I cannot speak for the rest of the continent. We have 54 countries, states, maybe as you might know it. So if you look at the AE personally, or at least in my capacity in the various roles that I occupy, I work a lot with the UAE. So that those few billions that you've mentioned, I have a stake in there. So for me personally, I think the UAE, definitely the appetite is there, and they will continue to invest. And also, in terms of doing business with the UAE, it's so much more easier. It's so relaxed. I don't know. There's something about the UAE. That's why you find something called the MENA region, which is Middle East, North Africa. So they sort of have a footing into the continent, but it's the upper continent with their brothers and sisters in terms of skin tone.
Sure.
But somehow, because our brothers at the top also know that we have brothers and sisters, it spills over. So for me personally, honestly speaking, the UAE is definitely one of the interests that I can root for. I've worked with them for quite some time. They continue to support it. In fact, I think it was early this month or last month, I was one of the moderators, in fact, the only African moderator at the Impact Investment Forum UAE. And it was sponsored by the Abu Dhabi Council and etc. Quite a number of big organizations, the investment firms and tech companies there. I think even Google was on board. What happened from that conversation, we are now having Impact Investment Forum Africa. And I'm leading that conversation, or the content, or the forum in itself, with their support. And that is happening on the 28th and the 29th of July. So you can see from one conversation, so I've really been privileged to engage with them. And it really is not a struggle. It happens like that. It's a decision, and they're very familiar with Africa, and they're very much well vested and invested and interested in Africa.
I love it. I love it. I feel like there's so much more we could talk about, but I know we're coming pretty much right up at the end of our time. So I'd love to have you again sometime here in the future. I feel like, again, there's just so much to know. There's so much to talk about, but just maybe for the last couple minutes, leave with our audience, maybe your final thoughts on how outside investors could get started, or at least get the right direction on how to invest in Africa properly. And like you said, Africa is a continent, 54 countries. Where does an outside investor even start? And maybe just leave that with our audience before we go for the day.
Okay, I'm going to be very selfish. Sorry.
Sure, that's okay.
So we had the privilege of launching in February what we call, or envision to be, the largest startup marketplace or ecosystem in the continent. So it's an online platform. It's part of our HD Africa family. It's called iHub HDAfrica.net. So if you go on the site, you'll find that. But basically on there, you should be able to register as an investor and find startups in the continent. And vice versa, if you're a startup from the continent, you can register there and find an investor from anywhere in the world. That's the first point. Currently, as well as we're expanding into the continent and the diaspora, we are also working on another platform where specifically, if you really want to make sure that, in terms of diversity and inclusion and equity and gender equality for women, if that's your specific focal point, you can go to also our platform and be able to find women in the continent who are doing exceptional things, and you can invest in them. And I'm biased because really, for me personally, it's about women and youth. I feel like a lot of work has been wasted, or time has been wasted on unnecessary things. This is, in fact, when you say, is it the right time to invest in Africa? You should be asking yourself, investing in who in Africa? So if you're investing in women and the youth, then you've got it right. And I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn or anywhere. That's all I'm really all about. That's my purpose for life. That's literally my entire being and existence, to make sure that African women and youth are invested in, because they really are shifting the dial and making sure that the continent is seen for what it is, and not just a farm for minerals and resources where people can just come and take and go and then give us aid for just our stomachs. We're fine. We find starving if it comes to that. But if you look at the number of resources and minerals that go out of the continent and the exchange in return, it's not worth it. So I'm particularly one of those people who are saying, women, youth, focus on that, and technology as well. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw this. Twitter has just announced that its headquarters for the continent will be in Ghana, one of my favorite countries in the continent. Nigeria is obviously not happy about that, but they know I love them too. So if you look at that, if the big tech giants are coming here, something is happening in the continent, and tech means youth. I'm sorry, but you think that our 63-year-olds and 80-year-olds for,
Yeah, I get you.
They're not coming for them, they're coming for us. So invest in women, invest in youth, and you should be fine.
I love it. Seipati, thank you so much. Really, really keen insight. And great advice. Just giving our audience some guidance. We know that we do have a lot of people who are interested in investing in Africa, and just thank you for making the time to be here. And I would love, like I said, I would really love to have you again here in the future if you're open to it, and we can dive a little bit more into this. But I enjoyed this. Thank you so much. And
thoroughly enjoyed it too, Jason. Thank you so much, really, for the invitation, and to your audience, all the best. And I look forward to engaging with all of you in bringing you into the continent.
Absolutely. Reach out to her on LinkedIn, like she said. Get started. Get talking. Thanks to our audience, and we'll see you next time on BizzTalk Africa. Take care. Yes. Bye-bye. Cheers.